Hold on. There's problems with my thing. Hold on.
I can do it.
Okay, fine.
Alright.
Thank you.
Okay.
Can you test first? Okay, yeah.
So, alright.
For far too long has predatory capitalism been able to market things and prey on the vulnerability of individuals and the human mind. I think that F2P games are no different from this form of capitalism that is so harmful to individuals and affects the lives of thousands of individuals. The first thing I'll do is tell you on my first argument why this whole form of capitalism is immoral, unjustified, because it preys on the vulnerability of individuals. The first thing I'll do is explain to you the structure of these games and how they operate. So the first thing we need to recognize is the way in which these games are marketed is that it's free, is that it's affordable, is that it's cheap, that individuals should go into it because it's something that's extremely affordable and free. The first thing I'll say is this in of itself is immoral because it isn't. Because when you go into these games, I think structurally the games make you pay. And trust me when I say that these games prey on human lust to win, prey on like individuals to be addicted to the game to gain profit. So how does this happen? So firstly, when these games, they market themselves as free, but when individuals go into the game, they find that they're getting addicted to it. And when they're getting addicted to it, they feel like they need to stay in this game. They feel like they need to win. I think the way in which the programmers program the game is also to ensure this. So for example, if you're playing the game, they will make sure that you will have to stop at some points to buy the expansion pack. That they will limit your progress in a way that you will feel the strong desire to buy the expansion pack, although you never expected it in the first place. They will market it in a way that you will feel so attracted to the special features that they have to make sure that you progress. I think this is based on human lust and natural human incentive to want to win. Because humans prioritize winning and because the games make you feel like you're a bad player and make you feel like you need that special feature or special attachment, special expansion pack. I think this is when the game becomes extremely harmful and extremely unfair for companies to brand it as free at start, but then attract you to suck you and to suck your money away and drain you in the future when you get attracted to the way in which the game operates. Also, I think the companies have a lot of advertisements within the game, which is extremely harmful. Recognize that when these games are branded as free, people don't expect to pay that money. They expect it to be free, but when they go in, they find themselves seeing advertisements of things. Recognize that these advertisements are so coercive in nature because they brand themselves as you need these things. And that because these individuals already like the game when they go in, they find themselves being coerced by advertisements, being coerced by expansion packs, and this is so harmful. How does it change in a world without these F2P games? I think games that have straight up payments are far more fair because individuals see the real picture that this is the amount that you have to pay compared to their world when they prey on individuals being addicted to the game once they go in to pay money and to suck your money. Before that, sure.
Then do you think in instance where social media should also be paid in order to defend the argument of addiction?
Yeah, sure. So I think that social media, they have advertisements. We also, if that is also to be principally consistent, I would also oppose social media advertisements that drag people in because they never consented to seeing those advertisements. They expected it to be free in the first place. But also, I would compare this to all things like drugs, where individuals are so addicted to it. I think they lose their rationality. This is important because recognize individuals probably don't have that money in the first place, and they never expected to pay that money. When they go into the game, and the way the game makes them addicted to it, makes them lose their rational calculus, where they end up paying for expansion packs just because they want to win, or just because they want to progress. I think this is very unfair to put towards individuals because we have our human failures and faults where we lose our rationality at certain points. They make it so much worse when they pull individuals to gain profit. My second argument, you have tangible harms, right? So on our world, I think there's two benefits. Firstly, when you have front-up payments, where individuals can see the proper price that they have to pay and aren't like manipulated by the whole facade of it being free. The first level is that people who can't afford it don't go into it in the first place. So you don't have individuals who believe it's free, go into it and end up seeing all these things and being dragged into it and then end up spending more money than they should have or should expect it to. Individuals who see the straight up payment and know that they can't afford it and aren't addicted at that point of time, don't go into it. You save a lot of individuals who can't afford it but are get dragged into it. Secondly, I think the way in which companies brand these things change so much. So right now on MDHO, companies can make it free, but when they go in, can spike up prices because they know that individuals will pay for it anyways, because they know that individuals are already attached to it. On our, I think companies will have an incentive to brand it at a far more reasonable price from the start, because right now they have an audience or a target market that they want to target to. So if they want people to go into the game in the first place, they can't put it at such a high price. They will have to brand it reasonably to allow individuals to go in, and then so the benefit is twofold. One, it's more reasonable, but more you don't end up spending so much money because it isn't based on your addiction to the game and to how much you like the game inside, and then that's when companies suck your money, right? I think that companies will still have an incentive to branding in a very reasonable way from the get-go because they can't manipulate individuals, because individuals see the real price. That's when they're in their rational mind. Companies know this. Companies will have to put a reasonable price compared to being able to manipulate and exploit individuals and spike up prices later on before they get.
These individuals that are referring to are already prone to addiction in the first place, where they can get addicted to many things easily. So it's their own weakness that have caused all of these problems. Why are you blaming these games?
So I think it's the sure that individuals are prone to addiction. You make that far worse. Companies exploit that addiction to make profit. That's why we regret it, right? I think it's also a scale. If they're addicted if they're addicted already and you know they're addicted, then you minimize that addiction. You don't exploit it by making their addiction give you profit and branding off their irrationality to gain this profit. But lastly, I think that the culture of you having games that are free, marketed as free, and when you go in, you realize that there's features that you need to pay for. Also transcends the normalization of this. Also transcends other apps and things. So things like when you have a dating app, for example, you really want a partner, so you go into the dating app. It's branded as free, but when you go in, you realize that you need to pay for things to get features that even allow you to use the app or utilize the app. All these are brands of immoral capitalism that we absolutely regret on the side of the government. Never be proud of it.
Thank you, PM. I invite L. Timer ready?
Yeah.
But before I begin my case, I feel there's a few rebuttals that need to be pointed out from the PM's speech in today's debate. First of all, about addiction, when she was talking about addiction. What you need to understand is that side government says that paid games are okay, but free-to-play games are not okay. But they also talk about how these free-to-play games are bad because of these in-game sales. But I don't know if she needs to clarify whether or not she's okay with these paid games having in-game sales as well. Because almost all paid games do have in-game sales. Just like CSGO was a few months back, when they were a paid game, they didn't have skins, they didn't have things like better guns and all these things. All existed with paid games as well. So that's something needs to be clarified in the speech after me. And other than that, I want to talk about how addiction what happens to addiction on our side. Well, first of all, you need to understand what happens when you have this rise of free-to-play games. What actually happens? Well, you have a bigger range of consumers. You have more people playing these games. What does that mean? It means that there is more discourse about these games. Why is this discourse good? Because when you do have this discourse, people talking about it, just like when you have social media, which does have its benefits and does have its disadvantages, you get these checks and balances. People start talking, oh, you shouldn't do it like this, you shouldn't do it too much. Because that's when people understand what's bad, how to rationalize your usage of it, how to use it well. All these reforms become better because even social media, they have now social media has screen time usages. You can see how long you've been using social media. These are all checks and balances that happens when discourse happens. And that's why on our side, when you have this big group of people who are playing these games, and you have this big group of people who talk about these games, that's when you get these checks and balances that help to reform the system, that we reform and prevent this addiction that you're talking about later on. And now we want to talk about your predatory capitalism. You're saying that because it's labeled as free to play, it makes people think that it's free. But I'm kind of sure that people are having an informed choice, knowing that these games actually have in-game sales. Of course, when you go to the App Store, just turn on your phone and go to the Play Store. It will say this game is free to play, asterisk mark, in-game sales. It's an informed choice that people make, that they are going into this, and it's their freedom, because they have this freedom on our side. They have this freedom in status quo, whether or not to opt in or to opt out of this situation. That's what they do not understand. They think that people are being manipulated by that we are telling them it's free, but it's actually not free. But we are telling them that they are in-game sales. So I feel that argument was invalid in the PM speech. Now let's talk about you talked about paid games trying to make it more affordable, wasn't it? You talked about it being more affordable and having reform there, but I'll take you in a second. We're having more reform there, but I feel that's the same as what you get on our side when you get competing games, they're competing, any sort of reform that you get, I'm sure we'll get on our side because of competition in a capitalist industry. And as I said earlier, the opting out is a sense of freedom that we get on our side because we have the freedom to opt in and freedom to opt out. But before I move on to my argument, yes.
So oftentimes when it's branded, those individuals don't realize that they will need those in-game sales or whatever to progress. They often expect to not have to use it because it's branded as free. Why is that an informed choice? Secondly, on your discourse argument, why do you want individuals to suffer only to achieve some discourse which may or may not happen? We oppose it and regret it from the very beginning.
Okay, your first question was about them not being able to make this informed choice because it's labeled as free to play. But the informed choice isn't whether or not you want to play. The informed choice that we're talking about is them buying it. And buying something, you know that you're paying for it. They know that is the informed choice that we're talking about in today's debate. And they do have that informed choice because there is a transaction going on. Because you can play the game without paying. And that is your choice, whether or not you want to play with paying or you want to play without paying. Even if it doesn't even coerce you to pay, but even if it does convince you to pay, is it still your decision? Yes, it is, because you can decide whether or not to opt in and to opt out, as I said earlier. And now moving on to your second question that you said that POI was about, what was the second question? The second question was about how you feel that these checks and balances, is it okay to make them suffer for a while so that we can get these checks and balances? Well, I feel it's good. You know why? Because even with social media, you see that with these checks and balances, first, maybe there are disadvantages and benefits. But then when the checks and balances come, you can obtain the result, these social media or even these games in this sense, with just the benefits, or at least minimal and mitigated disadvantages because of these checks and balances. And that's why I feel it's important in today's debate. But now, let me move on to tell you why these games are good in a sense, why this freedom is good and this exposure is good to particularly children and growing up teenagers and people who are thinking about their career choices, for instance. Because you need to understand that not everybody is good in academics, not everybody is good in things like mechanics and things like that later. Some people just need to know what they are good at. And when you do have this exposure for gaming, and when these people do get into gaming, that's when some people will understand that they are actually good in gaming. Why is this good? Why is it just a waste of time? It's because people actually can have a career in gaming, just like how PewDiePie did, just like how all these esports players do, and they make millions of dollars from this. Because you see these Dota competitions in KL, for example, they have huge cash prizes for those who are good at it, huge cash prizes for those who work hard and pursue a career in this sport. And how will this happen? It's when people start playing and their discourse happens, and that's when you get the rise of this competitive gaming that will happen more on our side, for instance, because we have a larger spread of consumers, because it's free to play. And also, so what's the conclusion of my speech today? I've rebutted all the points given by Prime Minister on how the addiction is bad. Actually, I said that there are benefits as well to this free-to-play games. There are benefits that that it takes you into it so you can work hard to achieve what you want to achieve. Because these people, it's not like they're making you work hard to do something that you don't want to do. They're working hard to achieve something that they want to do. And that's what I feel is missing from their case. Because these people want to play the games. These people want to win. It's not that they don't want to play and they're being coerced into playing this game, they're being coerced into paying for this game. But it's all in the freedom of their choice, and it's all in the freedom of their will. And that's why I feel we shouldn't regret these games, because for one, it gives these people the freedom. For two, it gives a better sense of the gaming industry, it gives a better reform of this gaming scene, as well as this competitive gaming becomes a career that people can pursue instead of trying to pursue something that they could never achieve because they're just not good at it. We give them that choice as well. So that's why I feel all these points should stand, and that's why I'm proud to oppose. Thank you.
Thank you. I invite Vivian.
I don't think it's freedom when children are actively taking away money from their own credit card accounts or from their parents' credit card accounts in order to purchase the in-game values, the in-game sales that your free-to-play games actively coerce them to purchase. We think you have to structurally prove to us why individuals in your world have a greater ability to consent beyond the fact that they actively know that there's some in-game sales and that apparently is able to give them rationality in consenting. I'll do three things in this speech. The first, a few levels of responses against the side of opposition. The second, I'll talk about the first argument on how the perpetuation of these harms with the innate structural rise of free-to-play games is unjustified. And the third, do you actually ascertain happiness and satisfaction through free-to-play games? Few levels of responses against our opposition from the very get-go. But to clarify, we are against games having in-game sales as a whole. What we are okay with are games like Minecraft or games like GTA that force you to pay a sum of money to access a structural story, a structural timeline, and ability for you to role-play that character in comparison to just having a blanket arena for individuals to compete against each other, which is the world they perpetuate. So, the first level response is again the ability for children to actively consent towards the purchasing of these extra stuff, right? So, for a first level, we don't think consent is actively attained. Why? Because the fact they can try the game out for free from the very first time means that children actively will try it out because there is no additional cost to it from the very get-go. The nuance that they fail to deal with is the structural system of free-to-play games as a whole. The reason why it's harmful is because it's able to draw you into the game perpetually by giving you a very fast rate of progress from the very start and then putting you on a threshold where you cannot progress unless you pay in that game. After winning for your 100 rounds in your first game, what happens after when you start perpetually losing for the next 5 to 6 rounds is that you want and you lust for the feeling of winning, and that in of itself creates an unfair and an unjustified force that coerces your rationality and takes it away. What happens is when they then offer you the chance to purchase these things for a discount whenever you continue to lose, that is when children are more likely to say, I should get this because I want to win. And that is the innate structural system of free-to-play games that coerces individuals to purchase their in-game sales. We don't think it's rationality on their side of the house. The third level response is, are you actually going to have checks and balances towards this? So a few things I have to say. The first, if you agree that there should be checks and balances, then you also agree in principle that free-to-play games are in generally bad and have to be controlled. If that is true, I don't see where the case is going to go on to. We don't know the impact of your arguments to a large extent. All your benefits are thereby diluted as well. The second thing, do people actually want to have children to be exposed towards gaming culture and have their successes based upon this platform? A few levels of responses towards this. The first, success is contingent upon children investing time, emotions, and investing their overall capacity to invest in their overall capacity in trying something out. We think every individual can ascertain some form of success if they try hard enough. Maybe children can ascertain success in science subjects. Maybe they can move on towards things like econs and move on towards things like business and law. We don't see how these things are no longer to be existent on the side of government. But on the third level, we think it's actually worse when you create these forms of structural, when you create a form of coercion factor that draws children into playing your free-to-play games. The first thing you have to understand is that these games in general bring extremely bad drawbacks towards health. You're forced to glue your eyes to a screen for 5 hours a day just to be good. This damages your health in terms of your eyesight, and it's to a large level also damages your backbones and damages your neck as well. When you're forced to go into these factors, because a large form of coercion in the asset house, we don't think the benefits you obtain are even ones that you should have in the very first place. You perpetuate this by allowing the rise of free-to-play games, coercing more children to opt out from studying, because in general, studying is thereby less intuitive and less satisfactory and less fun in general in comparison towards a free-to-play game that they're able to access and able to have some arbitrary fun with in this world. We think it's unjustified to perpetuate this. We don't think it's a positive argument. It's one that works against them. The first argument I have in this debate, the perpetuation of these harms with the innate structural rise of free-to-play games. The first level of analysis is on the access of streamers, right? We think streamers have an immense base of followers and viewers, which more often than not creates cults of personality, which leads to individuals idolizing streamers. They want to do what streamers do, they want to play the games they want. The reason why streamers oftentimes use free-to-play games as their content is because they want individuals to be able to try these things out. They want individuals to be able to also do the things that streamers want to do. And because there is no barrier of entry into starting off a free-to-play game, this means that to a large extent, your streamers are able to coerce their viewer bases into trying out these free-to-play games, and you then perpetuate them in the cycle of how they must continue buying in-game sales in order to progress, and this is the structural reason as to why you perpetuate the harm of this. The second level is how you normalize the action of predatory capitalism. The first link to this is that you need to understand that the rise continues on in their world. What happens is you normalize the structure of free-to-play games into the culture of the society as a whole. This ends up condoning the immoral action of predatory capitalism. How? The rise leads to more individuals opting in and getting enslaved in a system of perpetual exploitation. You continue forcing individuals to purchase things in which you don't necessarily attain happiness from, simply because it preys upon their general mindset and the vulnerability of the human mind that they need to read, that they want to progress, they want to feel as though they are good in something as a whole. This is worse on their side of the house at the point which you don't regret the rise of the system. We think there's structural harms of all of this. I'll move on to that before that, sure.
Do you regret capitalism as a whole because capitalism exploits markets, needs, and preferences and narratives people have?
So the difference between free-to-play games and other forms of capitalism is that those are more justified. You are able to consent better in a world in which there's an upfront payment in which you can decide rationally as to whether you actually want to have the game or whether you don't want to have the game at all. In their world, they make you try out. They lock you in a cycle where you have to be good in this game because you already know that you can be good, and that's where we think it's unjustified. Your form of capitalism is worse. The third, how does instances make society worse as a whole? We think we put a narrative because the narrative, at the point it becomes normal society, it becomes integrated into other forms of things like dating apps, for example, being able to access additional features at the point you pay for an in-game amount. This is problematic because you never normalize the structural enslavement of individuals with the vulnerability of their mindsets. We don't think it's justified in the world of opposition. So finally, do you ascertain happiness and satisfaction as a whole? We think happiness and satisfaction from games should actually be based upon winning or losing. It's not based upon that, but rather it's based upon being able to play a game and being able to have fun in terms of shooting a cop and then die in GTA, for example. These are forms of happiness which are principally justified because at the point that you actually chose to pay a certain amount of game, you are able to ascertain some form of happiness from it, even if you lose. In their world, you don't ascertain happiness because when you lose and you can't progress, you feel dissatisfied. You feel as though you want to continue purchasing and you're never able to feel happy again until you continue on the winning streak that you are unable to get unless you buy the in-game sales. The reason why it's arbitrary as a whole is because even if you ascertain happiness, it is one that's perpetual. It's one that never ends. The reason why this principle matters is because in society, we already regret the narrative that having tangible success is a preferred one because all of us understand it's perpetual and the standards of which will never end. If you side for a world which is to exploit individuals and the vulnerabilities of all humans, you side on the side of proposition.
Sure. Thank you, PM. Right here.
There will always be addicted gamers in both worlds. But it only depends and relies on how much of the checks and balances you have to cure the problem. In your side of the house, you have paid games. But how are you going to cure the problem that is addicted to paid games? Note that it is less likely for discussion to happen to what are the potential harms when it comes to paid games, because it's not that bigger of a problem, right? Because if it comes to paid, free-to-play games, it will be a bigger number. Bigger number means that it is exactly the parallel application when it comes to instance like the usage of Facebook, the usage of Instagram. Ever since the invention of applications like Facebook and Instagram, people talk about it because it's so viral, because it's so trendy, right? People use it. So now people talk about the usage of it, like pinpoint and do analysis about the harms and also the benefits about those applications. I think it will be more likely for people to consent and do more rational choices outside of the house. The point of discussion are more likely to happen because there will be a bigger number when it comes to free-to-play games, right? I have two responses. The first is rationality to consent to choices. I think the response is that then why people will still be rational in your side of the house, right? Because you can still spend money within paid games. Sure, maybe initially you can consent to the price of the paid games, but note that you still spend more in terms of the skin inside, in terms of being more prominent. Therefore, you spend more money to buy guns or buy skins to flex because it is trendy. It happens anyway. But the second is the harms of addiction, things like content and coercive environment. I don't think it's mutually exclusive because it also happens in your side of the house when it comes to paid games, right? I don't think it's mutually exclusive because if you consent to paid games, you will still spend more. I'll explain that more. I have two questions I'm going to answer in this debate, hence two metrics which my speech is based upon. The first question is why the rise of free-to-play games is justified, right? I think it's making a better informed choice. It benefits, we can explain why it benefits through the lens of consumer, right? How did it happen? Because with the rise of free-to-play games, it means it's going to be viral and a trend, right? It means that people will talk about it and it will be more discussion about it because it will be more viral. The comparative inside the house is that paid games wouldn't have that bigger an amount of consumers, so people won't really talk about it. But the problem is people will still get addicted, right? You'll still be addicted gamers. I think it's extremely pernicious. The point is there's no space for discussion and for people to pinpoint out the actual harms of paid games because people still get addicted, right? The comparison we give you is that in outside of the house, it's going to be more trendy, it's going to be more viral, it's going to be a bigger of a thing. So parents, however, will be more concerned about the usage of their children when it comes to free-to-play games. Because it's something so big that people will make a meme out of Apex Legend, between Apex Legend and Fortnite, right? It's more like for people to make discussion about it. It'll be more space for people to actualize and pinpoint the harms of free-to-play games. I will be more likely for people to be more informed and to do more rational ideas. I think it is better in terms of having more discussion because people then understand what are the possibilities when it comes to the consequences. I think it is exactly what happens when it comes to the usage of Facebook and Instagram. The point it is normalized. If you bring back in time 10 years ago, we see the creation of Facebook and Instagram, right? How people deal with it and manage with it. Because the instant gratification of doing those apps would make people addicted to this kind of social media. So what are the checks and balances in your world then? I think in our world, we support discussion in terms of people actualize and people pinpoint the harms of the usage of Facebook and Instagram. Therefore, it is more like for great individuals, they would support a more sustainable usage of Facebook. That would otherwise not happen inside our house because people do not realize the real consequences. Right? I think comparative is that in government, people will still play the paid games, so that the environment do not really understand the potential harms of it. Sure.
What is considered exclusive to your world, but in a world in which when you regret the rise of free-to-play games, it is based upon the challenges of why the games are innately structurally harmful to society as a whole.
I'll explain that. But I think the second argument is why free-to-play games is better than paid games. Because since they're taking a stance of defending the idea of paid games are better, to some extent we prove that the harms are still the same. I think we lose the ideology of getting it. Right? I think it's gonna be if it's gonna be rise if the game's gonna rise big enough, right? I think it'll become a thing that which people will monetize it. During my first speaker said people will make it a career idea. If free-to-play games is such a big amount of thing, people will make it a thing in terms of not hosting more tournaments. Like the pool price for Dota is like 20 million. In the sense, there will be more sponsorship because people care about this issue, because people care about the idea of free-to-play games. I think it will allow individuals that will want this as a career, they will block out in yourself the house because it is not a thing. What happens to people then? I think it is extremely unfair for gamers, because gamers will only be gamer because they don't have other alternatives, because they cannot excel in terms of academics. Because within academics, there will always be people that are getting like the top 5 or top 10. That will happen to people that is this label being the last class or whatsoever. I think it's extremely hard for them because there's no alternative there. Because I think this platform for gamers are less likely to be established inside the house because it's so small of thing. Have a seat. So I think the comparative is that because like free-to-play games has more consumer, you become more viral. What does it mean? It means that you're going to create more tournaments. And why is that better for the career of those gamers? Because note that gamers and streamers will always happen. No, gamers and streamers will always be there. But the difference is in terms of the environment of those people living in. The kind of environment cater to the gamers and also the streamers. If you're inside the house, like paid games isn't that big of a thing, there wouldn't be tournaments, there wouldn't be organizations that pay those gamers when it comes to playing those games. The comparative in our world is if the free-to-play game is such a big thing, there will be organizations, there will be tournaments, right? I think it will be more better in terms of creating more established platform for those gamers to rely on, right? Because that is their choice to choose games as a choice to make a career to begin with. So I think the biggest nuance inside proposition in opposition is that you don't create a conducive environment because it's not established to begin with, like for people. Because game would just be game, it wouldn't be something viral inside the house because it is less likely for you to achieve the idea of having more number game when it comes to playing games. I think if you prove to us why your homes are only mutually exclusive to our world because we don't provide a better environment and platform for those people, that people are less likely to do rational idea, hear uses, then you win this debate. Thank you.
Thank you. I invite the next speaker.
Mr. Speaker, it is true that addiction will exist on both sides. But the point of this debate is not about what exists and what doesn't. It's about the scale of the events that happen. We on side government are going to explain to you how exactly on their side of the house they make this issue of addiction so much worse. We understand there will still be people who are addicted on our side, but on their side they continue to coerce more individuals by using something like F2P games in order to get much more people into this through the mechanism that Maya explained from from first speaker, right? I have two questions that are asked in this debate. First is on this principle and which one is more beneficial to society, and the second is about which side better ensures the well-being of the players of the game, right? Because let's understand, the principle that came from the side of opposition is this freedom of choice. Because first speaker spent almost his whole speech talking about why people should have this freedom of choice to do things, and he says that people have an informed choice. We have a few responses to this.
First, we don't think they have an informed choice at the point at which they're coerced into this action. That is to say, when people are dragged into this game because it looks free, but upon joining it, when they realize that the feeling of succeeding within this game is what pulls them to spend like thousands of dollars on this game, we don't think it's a coerced choice. It's one in which it plagues their rationality, that it's not about one in which I should spend my money responsibly, but one that makes them want to continue winning this game, right? The second thing is that we think that even if it was an informed choice, we regret the detrimental harms that it's incurred, right? In the same way that we don't say to people, you can take drugs because that was an informed choice, we think we'll drop as a parallel and say that their freedom of choice is contingent, must be contingent on the harms that that are incurred upon people. They then try to say, well, you get more discourse on their side. I think that the fact that they want this, these check and balances such as discourse suggests already that they think that these actions are already going to create much harm on individuals. That is to say, they want a way in which they can control these harms because they accept that there is going to be harm incurred. But we challenge, right? Because discourse is only valuable at the point at which people can learn something from it. How valuable is the discourse that's going to come out from their side, right? Okay. What did we instead tell you? Firstly, how it's morally abhorrent to prey upon the vulnerabilities of the human mind. Because understand that we had no response to this whatsoever. Maya spent a large chunk of the speech talking about the structural characteristics of these sorts of games. The fact that they prey on innate human characteristics such as our will to win, our will for competition to outbeat our friends. At the point at which you realize that you have some money that will enable you to beat some of your friends because you can spend more of this money, that makes you use more of your money, that makes you spend less responsibly, we think those are the harms that incurred on the person. But more importantly, right, we told you about how this normalizes the whole notion of predatory capitalism. We then told you about how, at the point at which you condone this immoral action, that means you get a further perpetuation of this action. It justifies, companies are now justified to say that I can prey upon this person's vulnerability because I am justified as long as that person will consent to it. Firstly, we told you that consent is illegitimate and that justifies the company's actions, right? We don't think that's something that we want to support, right? We say that the harms of this is that it doesn't just exist within the gaming industry, right? It can infiltrate other industries, other apps, other applications, other websites. That means that not only in the gaming can you purchase extra packs that make you access more of the game, but you also have that in other forms of applications whatsoever, right? Alright, second question. Which side better ensures the well-being of players, right? We told you a couple of things with regards to this. We said that it's detrimental to people's lives because it is addictive. Okay, there will be addiction. Because we understand that there will be addiction on our side too. But why exactly do we think that the scale of that addiction is so much greater on their side? Because the nuance of this is that the game is branded as free. When it's branded as free, that means that people enter into this app, and what happens beyond that point is not within their control. It's because we think that although they had consented to downloading that app in the first place, the harms that were incurred upon them at the point at which they lost that rationality to this addiction is one that we don't think falls under the freedom of choice, right? What is the comparative? We think, yes, you will have some people addicted outside. Of course, addiction is going to exist, but the scale of that is much worse on their side because you brand that game as free. Now, like everyone, even people who can't afford games, who can't afford food and should spend it more responsibly, are sucked into your form of predatory capitalism. But secondly, we have also told you about how you don't actually get much satisfaction from the game, right? That is to say, we draw the comparative about how, on your side, to feel satisfied is to win, to feel to approach to the next level, and that's why you use money to get these jetpacks in order to do better than your friends. We drew the comparative and said that that's not what games should be about. Games should be about experiencing the game and enjoying that. At the point at which you make it to progress and progress and progress, that means that people are sucked into it, and in order to get the next form of satisfaction, that means that I need to spend more in order to do better in the game. The third thing that we said, also no response, is about the detrimental status quo in which we have cults of personality that continue to perpetuate the app. Where people like PewDiePie literally have 87 million people that follow him and that his actions severely affect us. Why exactly is this? Firstly, we say that like these cults of personality have an incentive to play free games, because the fact that they're playing free games means that viewers can also play those games, so that means that they have more viewers in that sense. The fact that it's accessible means that they want to play those games. Why do we think this is harmful? Because many streamers, people like Ninja, people like PewDiePie, they gain a lot of traction through their influence. What that means is that the scale of people and the number of people that you get to join these games and get addicted is much worse on their side of the house, right? Okay. Last thing on this future prospects thing, people can become gamers, they don't have to take econs. I think this is just a pretty rubbish point, right? For two reasons. Firstly, like gaming career success is very rare. So I don't think you should pit people against each other to try and join this gaming industry, which by the way, the status quo is already very like small and not many people can access it. And that's why we don't want people to lose this opportunity at such a young age, where they deny all other alternatives to try and go into something as niche as gaming. For all those reasons, we think we're the side that stands for the moral principle that capitalism should be one that should be maintained, should be justified. One in which shouldn't prey upon people's vulnerabilities. We support a world in which these are controlled. We're very proud to propose.
Thank you, Dr. Whip. Now you invite Whip.
Thank you.
People make irrational decisions all the time, and all of these are exploited under capitalism as a whole, and we see no reason why side government should blame specifically free-to-play games. There are two issues in this debate, and I will debunk side government's case as a whole. Let me start off with the first issue. Is there really a difference between free-to-play games and prepaid games? So side government want to tell us how free-to-play games are the source of all addictions we see. Game addicts and everything, where when they play, they can't stop playing, and they will be dragged into the game and buy more in-game purchases. But we on side opposition believe that this will happen under their side as well. Why? Because let's take Minecraft for example. It's a prepaid game. However, before you play, there's a demo version for you to try out. This means that under their side, where the only games that people should play are prepaid games, right? They will just try out demo version and get sucked into the games anyways. But secondly, that under their side, they've been told us that there are YouTubers like PewDiePie and YouTubers like this, right? They can surely play the prepaid games. They can surely screen the prepaid games on YouTube for everyone to view. And just by the pure basis of viewing these games, you get addicted as well, because you grow a big interest in these games, and under their side, people will still play prepaid games anyways. It is true that prepaid games, you only need to pay it once, and then you don't have to pay it continuously, but this is only true for some cases. And my Prime Minister and my leader of opposition have pointed out clearly that there are many prepaid games that do the same as free-to-play games as well. But the second aspect to this issue is on the scale of addiction. They claim that prepaid games are much more addictive, no thank you, than any other games out there. We tell you that this is not true. Why? People are addicted to games for several reasons. Possibly they find no pleasure in other things in life. They find no meaning in life. That's why they are addicted to games, since this is the best source of pleasure. If these people have problems in their lives, This means that under their side, when free-to-play games don't exist, they'll just resort to some other ways, no thank you, of expressing themselves. They'll just resort to some other ways to fulfill their addiction. Why? Because people are just motivated by the pure basis of enjoyment, pleasure, and of course, achievement. Thus, they will still play games, they will still do anything to get satisfaction under their side. They'll just get addicted. Anyways, we see no, and therefore, this scale of addiction thing, we don't think that it's mutually exclusive to only our side. Instead, it applies in both sides as before that.
Your notion of arbitrary consent is the very tactic played by corporations to scapegoat their responsibility towards fixing the game onto the viewers, onto the people playing it as a whole. Why is this justified in your work?
I'll talk about consent in my second clash. Now, moving on, still in the same issue, right? What we have told you, we have told you that free-to-play games, right? More people will play these games, and thus we will grow this gaming industry as a whole. When more people have access to gaming, this means that poor people who might not have a talent in studying but have a talent in gaming, they will find an opportunity in life. And most importantly, is that prepaid games, there are a high barrier of entry. This means that under our side, more people will play games, and we believe that this is a benefit to all of us since we can grow this gaming industry. Moving on to my second issue, which is on capitalism and freedom. Side government wanted to spend all three speeches talking about capitalism and consent. We believe that this is unimportant in this debate. Why? Because capitalism is something so normal in our lives that it exploits us, no thank you, in so many ways. It exploits our emotions, exploits our narratives that we have. For instance, that aging is a bad thing, that you must buy makeup to cover your lines on your face, for example. And we feel that predatory capitalism that side government wanted to highlight is simply capitalism. This means that they are going on such a socialist stand that capitalism as a whole is bad for all of us, since all of us know capitalism exploits many people. They force you to buy their goods, and they don't give you many choices to opt out from it. But moving on to the second part of this issue is on consent. They have told us that people are irrational when it comes to playing free-to-play games. They will spend lots of money in it, and children will be one of the most prey that will be the major prey in this debate. We believe this is not true. Why? Because children, they have parents in the first place, and if these parents are slack about the education of these children, about what these children do all day, they will just play prepaid games anyways, and they will just do the same under their side. But when it comes to irrational people, right, we tell you that the coercion happens all the time, and we see this as normal. Why no thank you? There are politicians out there who use racist rhetorics to coerce you into voting them, where they use your emotions, they toy you, and they simply coerce you and blindfold you. And this means that coercion is something that's so common in our lives that it's not even that important. That is not even important because the election system, there's coercion all the time. There are politicians who might use racist rhetorics against you. There are politicians who might threaten your lifeline, the medical care that you will receive, and makeup. Yes, it toys at your fears as well. It indirectly coerces you to buying it. And games are just the same as everything around us. It coerces us, and we see, and we believe that this is certainly non-mutually exclusive and applies in both sides. We are living in a world where capitalism is so widespread, where coercion affects us all the time. Thus, this is not a new thing, and even if free-to-play games, right, they do not rise, people will still be coerced into other things. There are corporations who will still exploit other markets to make people pay. And when free-to-play games don't exist, many more ways of making money will follow suit. So what's the comparison here? Under our side, we gain the benefits of free-to-play games, and all the harms will happen on both sides anyways. Thus, we gain the benefit in this debate.
Thank you. I'll reply.
Okay, so how's my speech going to work? I'm going to divide it into 4 issues that actually happen in today's debate. The first being addiction, the second being freedom and consent, third being career choices as well, and the fourth being the cults of personality that you were talking about in the second speaker's speech. So first of all, let's talk about addiction. What did you talk about addiction? You talk about the health risks. You talk about it's cost more on our side because it is free to play games. And yes, maybe it does happen more on our side and it's free to play games, but what happens, you need to understand that when you do have this discourse, something that side government didn't understand throughout the debate is this discourse creates a safer environment that is better than what happens inside government side as a whole. The safer environment that happens at the end, the safer environment that we achieve, even if it takes a while, will be better than if we didn't have these free-to-play games. What do I mean by this? As I said earlier, things like screen time usage, parents can know what their children's screen time usage is, or if you did the wrong time. And things like this, parents being more aware of their children, this all happens on our side. So even if we do increase addiction for a while, we feel that we can mitigate these benefits, mitigate these harms over time, which is something that is important but was never understood by side government. Because our stance here on addiction is that at the end, what we get is better than what we started with. And that's what we care about in today's debate, that we get to mitigate this harm at the end of the day. Now let's talk about the benefits that we get, things like freedom. Well, you talked about things like it's not an informed choice. But it was argued throughout my bench that people are the ones choosing to do it. So like when you're talking about your cults of personality, when these people are watching PewDiePie and then they get influenced. But you don't take into account that the reason these people are watching PewDiePie and Ninja in the first place is because they enjoy it and they have interest in this. And that's why it's not them being coerced into doing this as anymore than it is them showing interest in this and pursuing what they want to do, which is something that was not understood by government as well. And let's talk about careers, something they did not touch upon in their speeches. Careers that we give them a better choice, that they can excel in things like gaming, esports, things like these Dota championships that we talk about, even in KL. How Science Study gave 10 million to the esports industry in Malaysia so that it can help grow the industry, so that all of this happened because of discourse that we achieve on our side, discourse that we achieve in status quo because of these free-to-play games. And last but not least is the cults of personality that I already mentioned actually, but I'll just go through it again. It's because that people who watch these things, people who join this cult in the first place, they are already interested. I don't go and watch it just because it's on YouTube. I go and watch because I'm interested in games. I'm interested in playing games. So when you do have these free-to-play games that Ninja or PewDiePie is playing, then you do get these people have the choice to play these games other than in these paid games where they don't even have the choice, when you care about choice so much in your speeches. And that's why I feel side opposition wins gets better careers for these people. The cults of personality argument was not anything that is supposed to be in today's debate actually. Freedom and consent is something that we care about more and we get to conserve more on side opposition. And last but not least, addiction. If you look at the end of the day, at the end of everything, we get to mitigate it more than you do on side government. And that's why I feel side opposition takes the debate today. Thank you.
Reply to close the debate. Accept the request. Can you do the correct time? No. Yeah, can you time like correctly?
Yep.
Around.
What time is it?
Yeah. Time it like correctly.
Yeah.
This time, yeah. Okay. Ready?
This debate is not telling us that there are harms on both sides. It's about telling us why the harms on a particular side is particularly worse in comparison to the other. We think the failure of side tell us why the harms of addiction in our world is somewhat more or somewhat less on their side, then it's already a failure in terms of them justifying their burden. Our burden coming to this debate is simple. At the point you prove that free-to-play games create innate and unjustified harm in society, and their harm causes a lot of vulnerable individuals to be locked into the fractal cycle of predatory capitalism. That is why we already proved this debate is one in which we made 4 issues in this debate. The first is the idea of do people consent, right? We think the distinction here is that consent rarely happens on both sides of the house. But the reason why consent is better on our side is because when you have an upfront payment, you have a greater capacity to at the very least rationalize the decision at a point in time. But notice, the reason why they fall is because their own arguments literally betray the argument of consent. When they say people have trends where they can follow their friends and how it's going to bring meaning to them, we know those are active arguments that already take away your ability to consent towards playing free-to-play games as a whole. We don't see how the argument can stand on the other side of the house. The second, about capitalism. We agree that it does exist on both sides, but again, it is significantly worse when you're actively harming and literally exploiting the vulnerabilities of the human mind at a point in which they lock individuals into a perpetual cycle of spending because they're rather addicted to the game with that free-to-play basis when they are locked into the first few phases of being able to achieve a lot. That is when we think it's unjustified, where they thereby use those nuances to make them pay. They fail to deal with these nuances, that's why capitalism exists worse on their side of the house. The third, the idea of discourse. So this argument is extremely problematic. It assumes that the argument of discourse can create the good benefits of being able to have checks and balances, and at the same time being able to give the benefits of creating traction and giving people an industry. No, these two things can exist together. If you're going to talk about discourse creating a greater industry, you also talk about individuals realizing that if there is going to be debates about how it is harmful, then they will lose their platform towards attaining success through gaming. This means that you cannot have both on your side of the house because ultimately the arguments on your checks and balances and discourse on that will be diluted by gamers which feel as though they have an industry which they can invest into. These two can exist. But even if it's true, why then is it not then important? Because if you're going to have an argument about checks and balances, it's already a principal concession that free-to-play games are bad in general. We don't see why we can't have this because our side is literally the one that emphasizes on why it's bad and why this should not continue perpetuating. We say we take this argument on the outside of the house. And on the argument on the career path, I think John already gave you enough analysis to why a career path is extremely limited in one that's gaming. But the most important nuance he gave was that it locks a lot of the most vulnerable and desperate individuals into a platform and into a roadmap in which oftentimes it's not feasible to attain success. Because the success rates are extremely low, because free-to-play games exposed to the most vulnerable individuals who have the least capital, they then force themselves into a career path in which might not give them success, which is more guaranteed. We would rather take a trade and say maybe it's hard to be forced into academics, but at the very least, it's a better path towards attaining success in our world. So the final argument on like the innate harm which they fail to deal with. What did we tell in outside the house? We told you arguments like how the innate structure of free-to-play games creates a harmful society in which allows for corporations to feel as though it's justified that they use predatory tactics in capitalism. This means they can point towards free-to-play games and say, it's okay for me to do this in other industries because you already accept this in the status quo of free-to-play games. They will perpetuate this harm, and we heard no response coming from their side of the house. The second level, we told you how corporations can thereby scapegoat their responsibility to fix the issue when they say the argument of people can actively consent. Because people actively consenting, which is a complete facade on their side of us, which corporations which then use to scapegoat the responsibility of actually fixing the innate problems like having loot boxes, literally gambling within the game in of itself. And on the third level, the innate harm of a free-to-play game is one that literally takes away the platform for the most vulnerable in society. You trap individuals who are poor, who have no access towards anything, or you trap individuals who are poor, who have the least access towards success. We say you force them into a platform which is ultimately worse for your side of the house. We don't think it's justified.